The world went completely silent. My roommate's voice, telling me the burglar had run away, faded into a distant underwater buzz. My eyes were locked, glued, to that high closet window of the detached garage. The security light from the main house caught it just right. A handprint, large, smudged, and slick with dark, wet mud. But it wasn't on the outside, where the rain had started to drizzle. It was on the inside, smeared against the glass, right where I had been standing just 3 minutes ago. He was inside. The realization didn't hit me like a wave. It hit me like a physical blow to the chest. My breath caught in my throat, a choking, suffocating gasp. While I was lying under that blanket, paralyzed with fear, listening to the doorknob rattle, someone hadn't been trying to get in. They had already found a way in and they were trying to get out. Or worse, they were playing with me. Hey, look at me. You're safe. What are you looking at? It was Jake. He was one of my roommates, a Navy corpsman, staring at me with genuine concern, his baseball bat resting against his shoulder. The other 4 guys, Mark, Chris, Leo, and Sam, were still scanning the tree line of the backyard with their tactical flashlights, the beams cutting through the midnight mist. I couldn't speak. My jaw was trembling so violently my teeth were clicking together. I slowly raised a shaking hand and pointed a finger toward the garage. Inside, I choked out, my voice barely a whisper. The window. Jake, the handprint is on the inside. Jake's expression instantly changed. The relaxed, protective, brotherly demeanor vanished, replaced by the cold, calculated focus of a trained military operative. He raised his flashlight, aiming the high-powered beam directly at the garage window. The light illuminated the muddy print, clear as day. Chris, Mark, on me, now! Jake barked. His voice wasn't panicked. It was authority personified. In less than 3 seconds, all 5 Navy guys surrounded me. The atmosphere in the backyard shifted instantly from a chaotic search to a tactical perimeter. They didn't ask questions. They saw the handprint. They understood. Get the dog inside the main house, Mark whispered, his hand gripping a heavy tire iron he'd grabbed from the porch. Lock the deadbolt from the inside. Do not come out, no matter what you hear. You understand me? I nodded frantically, tears finally spilling over my cold cheeks. I grabbed my Labrador's collar. He was growling now, a low, guttural vibration in his chest, and I sprinted up the back porch steps. I slammed the heavy wooden door of the main house, slid the deadbolt into place, and collapsed against the door, clutching my knees to my chest. Through the small peephole, I watched the backyard. From the safety of the dark kitchen, I could see the 5 beams of their flashlights moving in perfect synchronization. They weren't yelling anymore. They were moving in a tactical stack, the way they had been trained. Jake reached the garage door first, the very door that had been rattling just minutes prior. He reached down, gripped the handle, and turned it. Click. It was locked. The deadbolt I had turned a week ago, thanks to a random Reddit post, was still holding. But if the door was locked from the outside, and the handprint was on the inside, how did he get in? Suddenly, Leo, who was checking the side of the garage structure, raised his hand, signaling the group to stop. He pointed his flashlight toward the very back of the building, where the garage met the overgrown wooden fence of the neighbor's yard. There was a small, rusted crawlspace door near the foundation, an old coal chute that had been boarded up for decades. The boards were splintered. Someone had kicked them inward, creating a dark, narrow opening just wide enough for a human body to squeeze through. Inside the main house, my heart felt like it was going to burst out of my ribs. The intruder hadn't broken the doorknob. He had entered through the floor, through the crawl space, right beneath my bed. Outside, Mark and Chris took positions by the broken crawl space door, their bats raised. Jake, Leo, and Sam walked back to the main garage entrance. Jake pulled a heavy set of keys from his pocket, the master key to my room. I watched through the peephole, holding my breath, as Jake inserted the key into the lock. Turn, click, creak. The garage door swung open into the pitch blackness of my room. 3 flashlights pierced the darkness of my bedroom. From my vantage point across the yard, I could see the light beams bouncing off my posters, my unmade bed, my desk. Step out with your hands up! Jake's voice echoed across the yard, booming and severe. We are armed. Step out now. Silence. Only the sound of the wind rustling the tarp over the neighbor's fence. The 3 boys stepped inside, disappearing from my line of sight. Mark and Chris stayed outside, guarding the crawlspace exit, preventing whoever was inside from digging their way back out. 1 minute passed, then 2, then 3. Every second felt like an eternity. My mind was racing, replaying the entire night. If he entered through the crawlspace, he was in the room while I was sleeping. He must have stepped out of the shadows, looked at me, realized I was waking up. And then what? Why did he rattle the door? Was he trying to escape because I woke up? Or was he trying to lure me out of the bed? Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the garage. Smash! It sounded like my bookshelf collapsing. Then, shouting. Raw, chaotic screaming. Get down! Get on the ground! Do not move! He's going up! He's going up into the loft! My stomach churned. The garage had a small, unfinished attic space, a loft accessible only by a rickety pull-down wooden ladder located right inside my closet. The flashlights inside the garage began spinning erratically. I could see the shadows of my roommates struggling against something or someone. Then, a blood-curdling shriek. It didn't sound human. It was a high-pitched, desperate screech of a cornered animal. Thud, thud, thud! Someone was kicking the walls. I couldn't just sit in the kitchen anymore. Adrenaline took over my common sense. I unlocked the back door of the house, stepped out onto the porch, gripping the porch railing so hard my knuckles turned white. Jake! Mark! What's happening? I screamed into the dark yard. Stay back! Mark yelled from the side of the building. His flashlight trained on the roofline now. He's in the crawl space loft! He's trying to break through the roof shingles! Above the garage, I could hear it. Thump, thump, thump. Someone was violently throwing their body against the wooden rafters of the garage roof, trying to burst through the old decayed wood to escape. Inside the garage, Jake and Leo were pulling down the closet ladder. I'm going up, Jake said, his voice tense. No, wait for the cops, man. Sam called them. They're 5 minutes out, Leo shouted. He's desperate, Leo. If he breaks through the roof, he drops into the woods behind the fence and he's gone. Before Leo could stop him, Jake climbed the wooden ladder into the pitch-black attic of the garage. His flashlight held tightly in one hand, his baseball bat in the other. For 30 seconds, there was agonizing silence from the loft. Then, a scuffle, the sound of heavy boots dragging across loose wooden planks. Don't do it, Jake's voice echoed from above. Drop it! A loud crack resounded through the air, the unmistakable sound of wood hitting bone. A heavy groan followed. Then, the sound of a body tumbling down the closet ladder, crashing heavily onto my bedroom floor. We got him! He's down! Sam yelled, running out of the garage to signal the approaching police cars. Blue and red lights began flashing through the trees of our quiet neighborhood, reflecting off the wet asphalt of the driveway. 2 police cruisers tore into the yard, tires throwing up mud. 4 officers jumped out, guns drawn, rushing into the garage. A minute later, they dragged him out. I stood on the back porch, shielded by Mark and Chris, as the police led the intruder across the yard in handcuffs. I expected to see a monster. I expected a giant, terrifying criminal. But as the flashing blue lights illuminated his face, my breath caught. He was emaciated. His clothes were filthy, torn, covered in mud and cobwebs from the crawl space. His eyes were wide, bloodshot, and completely vacant, staring out into nothingness. He was shivering violently, whispering incoherently to himself. But what made my blood run cold was what he was carrying. The police officer was holding a plastic evidence bag. Inside it was a long, rusted hunting knife and a digital camera. One of the responding officers walked over to us, taking out a notepad. You the girl sleeping out there? The officer asked, looking at me with deep sympathy. I nodded, unable to speak. You're incredibly lucky, the officer said, shaking his head. We know this guy. His name is Garrett. He's a transient, been drifting through the county for months. He doesn't just rob places. He squats in crawl spaces and attics, sometimes for weeks, watching the people inside. The officer looked back at the garage. He didn't break in tonight. According to the dust patterns and the items we found up in that loft, he's been living in the crawl space above your bedroom for the last 3 weeks. The words echoed in my mind, making me physically sick. 3 weeks. For 3 weeks, I had been changing in that room. I had been sleeping, talking on the phone, living my life. And every single night, just a few feet above my head, he had been watching me through the gaps in the floorboards. The reason the doorknob was rattling tonight, he hadn't been trying to get into my room. He had dropped down from the loft while I was asleep to get closer to my bed, but my dog had stirred. Garrett got spooked, tried to run out the main door, but found it deadbolted. In his panic, he rattled the knob desperately, trying to escape before I fully woke up. When he couldn't open it, he hid back in the closet window area. And when he heard my roommates coming, he climbed back up into the dark loft, waiting. The police loaded Garrett into the back of the cruiser and drove away, the sirens fading into the distance. My roommates stayed up with me for the rest of the night. We sat in the kitchen of the main house, drinking coffee in complete silence as the sun slowly began to rise over the horizon. Needless to say, I never slept in that garage again. That very weekend, the guys helped me move all my belongings into the main house. We packed up the bed, the desk, the clothes, and we nailed the garage door shut permanently. It took me months to sleep through the night without waking up at every little creak or groan of the house. Even now, years later, whenever I hear a faint tapping sound or the subtle rattle of a doorknob, my heart stops and I find myself looking up at the ceiling, wondering what's hiding in the dark.